Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here today with my Nonfiction November wrap-up. I read only nonfiction in November, so this is also my monthly wrap-up. I started off the month with a great book, Leave Only Footprints, My Acadia to Zion Journey Through Every National Park by Connor Knighton. This was just fabulous. It's about the author's 1 year of visiting every national park. At the time he wrote this in 2016, that was 59. There are 63 now. And you can tell that it was written by a journalist. He is a journalist for CBS Sunday Morning, and it shows because he has a talent for finding these little fascinating aspects of each park. Like even some of the parks that we'd been to before and that we've been to multiple times, he found something there to investigate that was unique. So it's not just a straightforward travelogue, nor is it a memoir, strictly speaking, although it is written in the first person, and it is his personal story of visiting these parks. But he's divided the book into 23 chapters that each investigates one topic, often with multiple parks. So he's got chapter 2 is water, where he goes to hot springs and Biscayne Bay. He's got obviously an animals chapter, but he's also got chapters on God, on sound, on mystery. He's an excellent writer, and he not only makes each of these chapters absolutely fascinating and page-turning, but he's also got a great sense of humor, which I loved. I thought that added a lot to the book. In fact, I enjoyed this so much, and my husband had read it before me, that I wanted to see more. He does have 2 sets of color photos in the middle of the book, and I had pored over those, but I wanted to see more. So while he was on this trip, he did some segments for CBS Sunday Morning. He was a freelancer then, but they had contracted with him. When he explained what he was going to be doing, they contracted with him for a certain number of episodes. So we went on YouTube and looked for his episodes, which were fabulous. So these are little, like a Sunday morning news show segment, like 5 or 6 minute segments, visiting a different park, investigating one of these interesting topics. They are from a few years back, so if you want to look at some of those YouTube videos, be sure to include his name. So I think the way I looked it up was CBS Sunday Morning, National Parks, Connor Knighton, and then some of his stories came up. So just absolutely fabulous. And for Nonfiction November, this fit into the challenge word, obviously, of path. Next up, I listened to the audiobook of Read Dangerously, The Subversive Power of Literature in Troubled Times by Azar Nafisi. She's the author of Reading Lolita in Tehran. And this book fit into the challenge word join. So her structure here, it's a very thoughtful and very thought-provoking book. And her structure is that it's a series of letters she wrote to her father between 2019 and 2021. So we've got some significant events. She's an American citizen now. So we've got some significant events in America and in the world at that time. The end of Donald Trump's presidency, which she refers to the period after that as the post-Trump era. Yeah. Obviously the pandemic in 2020. And since this is structured as letters to her father, who still lives in Iran, she is looking at current events in both places through the lens of literature. And so each chapter is about a different book, and each chapter is a letter to her dad. And I think these were real letters that she wrote, because when they lived near each other, the two of them would often have long discussions about literature and current events and politics. And so here she's sharing all of that with the reader through the letters she was writing to her dad from the US to Iran. So some of the books that she covers are The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, The Handmaid's Tale, of course, by Margaret Atwood, and many others. Some that I had read and some that I hadn't. So that's not a prerequisite for enjoying this book, having read all the books she talks about. But the way that she digs into each piece of literature and looks at it through the lens of current events, and her fascinating comparisons of living in Iran when the Islamic Republic took over and living in the US during that period of time is fascinating. The audio is very good because she reads it herself, which I always enjoy. But there were so many passages that I heard and thought, oh, I have to listen to that again. So I did a lot of rewinding. In some cases, I pulled out the Notes app on my phone and transcribed what I was hearing. It's just that kind of moving, thought-provoking book. Highly recommended and very, very relevant today. In between longer nonfiction books, I squeezed in a graphic memoir, Sunshine, How One Camp Taught Me About Life, Death, and Hope by Jarrett J. Krasaska. He is the author of Hey Kiddo, an earlier graphic memoir about growing up as a child in the care of his grandparents. His father left when he was a baby, and his mother was addicted to drugs. So that's all covered in Hey Kiddo, although some of it is alluded to here, especially at the beginning. But here, Jarrett is talking about his experience, his senior year of high school, of volunteering in a camp for kids with cancer, and how it literally changed his life. So this would definitely fit for either path or join. It is absolutely wonderful. It is a moving, heartwarming, at times funny, very poignant story. Yes, he's at a camp with many terminally ill children, so I did cry at one point, but I also laughed, and it's just so moving. This is one of those books that I finished and just held to my chest, and it's got his drawings in it of he and his classmates as counselors at this camp, of him working with some of the kids. Just outstanding from beginning to end. Highly recommended. I also read Dead Wake by Erik Larson, The Last Crossing of the Lusitania. This is classic Erik Larson, in-depth, gripping, narrative nonfiction that tells a historical story as if you were reading a novel. Here, although you may have learned about the sinking of the Lusitania by a German U-boat during World War I, you may have learned about that at some point in history class. The information that Erik provides here, the research he's done, what he has dug into, is way beyond anything you ever learned in school. In addition to looking at the disaster from the perspective of the passengers and crew of the Lusitania, you also get the perspective of the German U-boat captain and a couple of members of his crew. And it is almost all first-hand accounts from logbooks, diaries, letters people were writing while they were on board. You get to know all of these people, not just the passengers, but the crew of both vessels, as if you were reading a novel, as if they're characters in a novel, only this is real life. It's amazing how much research he does. In fact, the back, this book actually ends on 359, and then all of this is notes. So if you're into looking for further reading, that's all there. I still have my bookmark in here because I want to finish reading the back matter, a reader's guide, a note from the conversation with Eric Larson. I do plan to finish reading that. But this was, as always, just fascinating. I learned so much, but it's also written in a gripping style that keeps you reading. And that fits for the challenge word, shot. And finally, I capped off Nonfiction November with another audio, Nowhere for Very Long, The Unexpected Road to an Unconventional Life by Brianna Madia. So this is her story of living in a van and traveling across the American West. But it is a true memoir because part of the story is how she came to live such an unusual life. So I wouldn't call it like a travel log as much as a memoir of her early life, her childhood, the factors that she thinks may have led to her living this way. Her husband was along for some of it. Toward the end, she's on her own, along with their two not small dogs. And this was not like a fancy present day motorhome van. This is an old 1980s, I think, brilliant orange, you can see it on the cover, van with, when they bought it, just had a platform bed in the back. So this was not glamping. This was not traveling in comfort. So it's fascinating, both their travels, and they're in parts of the American West that I haven't seen yet, so that was interesting. But also how she came to live such an unusual life and what happened, some of their adventures and misadventures. So it's a fascinating story. She's a good writer. She has an English degree, so she's an excellent writer. She reads the audiobook herself, which, as I said, I love in a memoir. And that fits into the challenge word of path. Oh, I should give you one warning. There is one, if you're the kind of person that can't read about bad things happening to animals, there's one scene where something happens to one of their dogs that's pretty horrible. But, it's one tiny part of a bigger book about this lifestyle and how she came to be there. So the only category I missed of the challenge words was code. Now, I had a book lined up for this, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through, but I did not finish it by the end of November, so I'm still reading it. And that is Tell Me More by Kelly Corrigan. I'm trying to remember the subtitle because I didn't write it down. 12 phrases I'm learning to say, something like that. It'll be up here on the picture. I love Kelly Corrigan. I've enjoyed listening to her many times on podcasts, including her own. She's got a great sense of humor. So I am enjoying that. And I think it fits with code because it's kind of her life code, the way she's set this memoir up. But I did not finish it by the end of November. So You can hear more about that in my next Friday Reads and at the end of December. So that's what I read for Nonfiction November. I would love to hear what you read last month, whether you were reading nonfiction or not. Please let me know in the comments down below and take a moment to like and subscribe to my channel.